Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the City Club of Chicago, Congressman Jesse Jackson. Congressman?
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let me first begin by expressing my appreciation to the City Club of Chicago for extending to me the invitation of coming today and sharing with you on what we believe in the South Side and the South Suburbs to be a momentous day. When we leave the City Club today, we have a commission meeting of the South Suburban Airport Commission, where we will sign a contract with two world-class developers to build and operate the Abraham Lincoln National Airport at University Park. For more than 24 years, we have discussed the idea of expanding aviation capacity in the South Suburbs. And on a day that is momentous for the South Suburbs, I'm indeed honored and privileged that our day begins here at the City Club with our region's most influential business people. And so I want to thank Jay Doherty and the City Club for extending this invitation to me. And before I begin our presentation, I want to make a few brief introductions. First of all, I left Washington yesterday, and there was a small 4-year-old girl who couldn't believe that her daddy was leaving town. She knows that this week I'm leaving the country on a humanitarian mission. Yes, you. I see you're pointing at yourself. I'm about to introduce you. I'm heading on a humanitarian mission to the Sudan, the Darfur region, to help highlight some of the problems that are taking place in that part of the world. But there is an extraordinary young lady who I can't say no to whenever she says she wants to go, even if it costs me an extra airplane ticket, for which at some point in time I call Uncle Jim Compton to help reimburse me. My daughter, Jessica Jackson. Jessica? I'm also joined on this occasion, she's a little shy, she didn't want to be introduced. She didn't have that problem at the State of the Union. It's a Chicago problem for her, not a national one. And my lovely wife, Sandy, who happens to also be our family's lawyer. Sandy Jackson is joining us today as well. A few years ago, I had the great privilege, when I first was elected to Congress and shared with members of Congress as well as members of our great city and state a vision for the South Suburban Airport, of sitting on the floor of the Congress one day when a very large and imposing figure came over and sat down and talked with me. He would be here with us this morning. I understand that he will probably be at our commission meeting this morning. But Congressman Henry Hyde has been so instrumental in helping guide this process forward out of a genuine concern for the economy of our state. In Congressman Henry Hyde's absence, will you please give him a round of applause? There are also some very important South Suburban luminaries who are present, and I want to acknowledge them as a group and then share with you some special thoughts about my two friends from the Northwest suburbs. First, will the mayors and managers, various mayors and managers of South Suburban communities who are present, would you please stand so that we can acknowledge you? Almost 8 years ago, when I met with Congressman Henry Hyde, one of the requirements that's not written in federal law or state law was the idea that in order to build a facility in our state of this magnitude, that we would require regional consensus. And so Congressman Henry Hyde reached out to mayors and managers in his congressional district. I reached out to mayors and managers in the South Suburbs, and we formed a regional partnership to address our nation's aviation capacity crisis. And two of the mayors who have been most instrumental and helpful in helping us guide this process forward, and without their help, we simply would not be celebrating in the South Suburbs this momentous occasion, Mayor Craig Johnson of Elk Grove Village and Mayor John Giles of Bensonville. Would you please acknowledge them? And last but not least, the distinguished honorees of this occasion, representing SNC Lavalin, Mr. Carl Ray, and representing Elcor, Mr. Kurt Eichler. I want to share with you first why I got in the aviation business. I represent a congressional district where there are communities that have, Mr. Bonaparte, 60 people for every one job. 60 people for every one job. And there are some northwest suburban communities that have 3 jobs for every one person. Hence, roughly 30,000 people live in Elk Grove Village, but 100,000 people go to work in Elk Grove Village every day. In the south suburbs, on the Bishop Ford Freeway on I-57, there is a traffic jam at 8 o'clock in the morning going north. In the meantime, going south, you can have a picnic on I-57 south in the middle of the highway, and there will not be a traffic jam, and you probably will make it home by 5 without worrying about getting hit. And so the region itself seeks balance, and it needs balanced. The South Side and South suburban politics for the last 2 generations have been driven by the absence of economic activity as our side of town has transitioned from an industrial-based economy where U.S. Steel used to employ 20,000 people in the South Shore region, and in Harvey, Wyman Gordon used to employ 15,000 people. These businesses, these industrial-based businesses, have long since disappeared, and the service-based economy, you'll hear this over and over and over again today, the service-based economy has not yet reached the south side of Chicago and the south suburbs. It is why downtown we have Hyatt and Hilton and Fairmont and other great hotels like Sofitel. But on Stony Island Avenue, we have the Ranch Motel, the Zanzibar Motel. We used to have Roberts, that's now gone. In other words, Hyatt, Hilton, Fairmont, and the larger hotels are not on the south side of Chicago. And quite possibly, to summarize the brief, bleak south suburban and south side economic outlook, is the Rand McNally Easy Finder map. The map that is purchased and available for purchase at any store in the downtown area. It says it's the Easy Finder map for the city of Chicago. It has all of the northwest suburbs on it. It has most of the city of Chicago on it. It has all of the southwest suburbs on it, but the Chicago Easy Finder map stops at the Museum of Science and Industry. In other words, the Chicago Easy Finder map doesn't even have all of Chicago on it. And that's kind of unfortunate, Mr. Compton, because my congressional district starts just south of the Museum of Science and Industry. So I've been a long battle, thanks to the leadership of a lot of people who have worked very hard, many of whom are present today, to fight for, very publicly, anchors that would put the south side of Chicago and the south suburbs on the map. And I'm so honored and privileged that the Ho-Chunk representatives are here today because they represent one of the anchors for the south side and south suburbs. I know that there are many advocates in this room for a downtown city of Chicago casino, but the 5,000 jobs that the Ho-Chunk proposal represents, as well as the South Suburban Airport proposal that I will present to you today they represent the anchors that make Chicago and the Southland part of the Chicago Easy Finder map. Whenever a weatherman does his report in the morning, or her report, showing what the weather is at O'Hare, and what the weather is out at Midway, and what the weather is out in Aurora, because of these 2 projects, they will start mentioning what the weather is going to be in the south suburbs, and that's a big deal. So please give the Ho-Chunk, who are also present today, another round of applause. Congressman, you've been Johnny One Note. We know that you're a congressman. You're only member of Congress who's missed 1 vote in 10 years, Democrat or Republican. I've cast more than 4,200 votes. I've tried to avoid all major scandals in the city of Chicago. My father called me the other day and he said, "Jesse, you got this 1 note." But I said, "Dad, my 1 note is so loud that I understand, Jay, that this is an unusual turnout for a morning breakfast at the City Club. And so I'm grateful for all of you for taking time to learn what we are trying to do for our region, for our economy, for our city, and for our constituents. We approached consultants, S&C Lavalin and Elcor, about the idea of building the first airport in the United States in 25 years, recognizing that O'Hare Airport was reaching operational capacity. It was built as an airport to handle about 850,000 takeoffs and landings a year, and is now somewhere around 950. That Midway Airport was built to handle about 150,000 takeoffs and landings a year, or considered in operation, but it's now operating at about 175. The nation's aviation system is growing at roughly 4% per year. But in the city of Chicago, for the last 10 years or so, our capacity has only been growing at 2% a year. And in the last 6 months, the FAA has even begun to limit and further reduce the 2% of capacity that we presently enjoy in our region because of the inherent constraints of our aviation facility. And so the last 4 directors of the FAA have said to Chicago, to our region and to our state, over and over again, not only do we need new capacity, but the way the capacity problem in the final analysis must be solved is you need new runways in a new airspace that does not conflict with O'Hare Airport and Midway's airport's airspace. Gary Airport, it's a consideration. Rockford Airport is a consideration. But since we're only growing at 2%, and the national aviation system is growing at 4%, we're not discussing 10 or 20,000 operations. We're discussing 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 takeoffs and landings that are out there that we cannot capture in our market, that are now finding themselves in St. Louis, Denver, and looking for other places to go other than the city of Chicago. Now, why is aviation so important? Roughly 65 million people pass through our airports every year. Of the 65 million, 22 million get off of a plane, catch a taxi, rent a car from Hertz, Alamo U of I. They rent a car from Dollar. They come into the city of Chicago. They check into our hotels in downtown Chicago. And in order for these hotels to be at profitable margins, they must maintain 80% occupancy every single day. And so when Chicago starts losing capacity and losing conventions, not only does the cab driver feel it, and I understand that last week the cab drivers went before the city council asking for a rate increase because of fewer conventions coming to the city of Chicago. Not only do the cab drivers feel it, but the bellman at the hotel feels it. The person who takes our bags from the hotel up to our room feels it. The Hyatt, the Hilton, the Fairmont feels it. UPS feels it. State Street feels it. Michigan Avenue feels it. The quality of life for Chicagoans begins to diminish. Firemen begin fighting for broader contracts with less revenue. Police officers start fighting for more contracts with less revenue. The social fabric of our city is tied to its economy, which is directly tied to these aviation facilities. And so it's taken some time for me to convince my father that this is a big note worth hanging around for a while, because the problem is not going anywhere until we commit ourselves to expanding aviation capacity by building new runways in an airspace that is different than O'Hare's and Midway's in order to capture and broaden the market. Towards that end, this is the report of our developer consultants, and I'd like to walk you through the process for how airports will be constructed in the 21st century, significance of the agreement that we are signing today, hopefully the support that we will receive from Mr. Martin and the governor in advancing this project and broadening aviation capacity and opportunities for all Illinoisans. The road that we took. First, the South Suburban Airport was always envisioned, if I could dim the lights just a little bit, as being governed by a local public authority on state-acquired land. Every recent FAA leader has called for more private investment to support airport improvement funds and airport-generated funds, and we believe that the South Suburban Airport is the best opportunity for this. We sought a public-private partnership because it combines the best of public governance and goals with private capital and experience, and as a new airport, a greenfield, the South Suburban Airport is ideal for this. And last but not least, more than any politics ever could, believe me when I tell you, friends, we're beyond the politics of this now, the willingness of Mr. Eichler and Mr. Ray to be here today to put up their own money and the interests and investors that they represent to build this airport is a testament to the viability of a market in the south suburbs that can make this airport work and have the capacity to bring literally hundreds of millions of dollars to our region over time, indeed billions. So, what did we do first? First, we searched worldwide and find experienced airport developers and investors who would serve as consultants to test a financially self-contained airport that can attract both investors and cost-conscious airlines. Secondly, we had to assess whether there was a realistic plan and financial structure for the South Suburban Airport. That one, required no public subsidies and can even repay the state over time for its land. This is critical and it's important because any airport in its initial stages that requires airport improvement funds, by definition, would be competing with O'Hare Airport and competing with Midway Airport for those funds. The mayor of the city of Chicago has made it perfectly clear that that is a non-starter. It has to be attractive to start with and can grow efficiently as demand requires. It retains public control while attracting private investment, can be priced low enough to readily attract airlines, and you will hear this over and over again in this presentation. And last but not least, it must complement O'Hare Airport and Midway, not compete with O'Hare and Midway, and be viable even as O'Hare expands and Midway prospers. So what did we have to do first? First, we had to craft an intergovernmental agreement, which is a creature of Illinois law. It simply allows, under the Illinois Aeronautics Act, one or more municipalities to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for the purposes of achieving a public purpose. And in this case, the public purpose is to build an airport. The IGA, which now has more than 32 South Suburban governments, and the Illinois Aeronautics Act are the legal foundation for the South Suburban Airport Commission's authority. The act goes even further. It says that those communities need not be contiguous to the airport itself. But if they are, it's a great thing. But if they're not, it's fine. University Park, however, is one of the Iron Ring communities that is contiguous to the South Suburban Airport, and the chairman of the South Suburban Airport Commission is the mayor of University Park, Mayor Al McCowan. It had to serve as a bridge to create the authority. It has to be able to quickly garner the support from both political parties, Democrats and Republicans, key legislators, and stakeholder communities, and has to be able to garner the support, ultimately, of the governor. So, our agenda, very briefly. Our developer consultants, who they are, SNC Lavalin and Elcor, an overview of the analysis, the planning and conceptual design, the economics, the roles and benefits, and then our conclusions and any questions that you might have. Who's Elcor? Well, Elcor presently has $7.7 billion in developments completed and underway, more than 16 million square feet of commercial space, and they are the pioneer in structuring public-private partnerships, including transit-oriented developments, new airport facilities, and new public educational facilities. The largest public-private airport project in the United States is owned and run by Elcor. It is the $1.4 billion JFK Air Terminal number 4 in New York at JFK. Some of Elcor's other partners include Amtrak, the Postal Service, the FBI, the New Jersey Transit Authority, and they also work very closely, indeed are a part of Lehman Brothers, which is an investor in Elcor. SNC Lavalin. They are the investor, owner, and operator of the Malta International Airport, an all-new airport similar in size to the inaugural South Suburban Airport. And obviously, from this construction, you can see that they have built airports that fit the local vernacular within Malta. And lastly, and probably most importantly for our purposes, is what Elcor has done at a greenfield facility in Paris. This is SNC Lavalin's operated airport in Paris. It is Paris's third airport. And as you can see, I think I'm going to go back just one. As you can see, economic development is the byproduct of this one runway and small taxiway. You can see that it uses existing roads and infrastructure, similar in size in terms of acreage to the footprint of the land that has been set aside by Governor Edgar and land that has been purchased by Governor Ryan and Governor Blagojevich for the inaugural airfield in the south suburbs. And so this layout, the Vatry Airport, is very similar to what the south suburban airfield will look like. SNC-Lavalin uses what we call modular construction. You will hear this again as we begin to go through the process of how the airport will be developed. Modular construction does not mean cheap construction. It means high-quality construction, just like you walk through O'Hare Airport, except 21st century airports are going to be built modularly. That is, they're going to be built in sections. This is the Vancouver International Airport when it was first built. This is Module 1. Then it quickly expanded into a chevron. And as capacity increased, they expanded in this direction. Just-in-time construction allowed them, using modular construction, to create this part of the airport. And then expanded. And then ultimately contemplate a hotel at the airport. And expanded in this direction. And as you can see, a very large chevron was then contemplated based upon the demand of this airport. The only reason the airport has not expanded in this direction, I now understand that it is under consideration, is because of the events of 9/11, which changed the economics of the aviation industry. But this chevron, this terminal, this modular mode of the airport would expand in this direction at the appropriate time. To give you some sense that these airport developers deliver their projects on time, this gives you some sense that not only do they deliver their projects on time, but they actually deliver them under budget. And so when they give us hard numbers for building the South Suburban Airport, our developers are confident that they can deliver an airport to our region for the exact numbers and even less than what they have anticipated. So, the South Suburban Airport was viewed as a flagship airport development with opportunities to introduce new best global practices, a model for safety and security, the first airport built in the United States in 25 years, and the first airport, by definition, built since 9/11. An airport precisely sized to the market, and that's important. The runway's not too long, the terminal's not too large, the apron's not too wide. It's not an overbuilt airport that makes it impossible for low-cost carriers to arrive at the airport on opening day. A brief synopsis of airport economics. In order for an airplane to land at O'Hare Airport and for a passenger to get on and off of an airplane, Mr. Bonaparte, they pay about $13.50 per passenger. As O'Hare expands, that number is going to go from $13.50 to $15.50 to the low 20s to even the mid-20s, making it virtually impossible for O'Hare Airport to ever be a low-cost carrier airport under its present construction options. It will never be a low-cost carrier airport because low-cost carriers are not willing to pay the per-enplanement cost of $13.50. At Midway Airport, the per-enplanement costs for Southwest Airlines are somewhere around $11.50, which is why Southwest, of all the aviation companies in the country, it's the most successful and the most profitable because it maintains a per-enplanement cost of under $12. When the South Suburban Airport is built, we plan to build an airport with a per-enplane cost of under $10, making our airport the first low-cost carrier airport built in the United States. And the New York Times reported less than 6 months ago that in 5 to 10 years, 50% of the aviation market is going to be low-cost carrier. And so we must build not only new runways in a new airspace, but we must build a low-cost carrier airport in a new airspace in order for our region to maintain its dominance in the aviation industry. And so the light green area represents the land as contemplated by Governor Jim Edgar, the 24,000 acres. O'Hare Airport presently operates and functions on 7,100 acres. This field is 3 times the size of the footprint of O'Hare Airport. The dark green area represents the soon-to-be acquired 4,400 acres as contemplated by Governor George Ryan and Governor Blagojevich for the inaugural facility. We're building an airport that fits inside of the state's inaugural airport. And the one runway and 5 gates that we seek to open by 2009 cannot possibly be seen as competing with O'Hare Airport. So anyone here who says they're building an airport that competes with O'Hare Airport, one runway and 5 gates, which represents 1,000 construction jobs by 2007 and 15,000 permanent jobs to the South suburban economy by 2009, cannot possibly be construed as competing with O'Hare Airport. But it gives our region and our side of town a chance to compete economically and achieve balanced economic growth. And so, after very detailed studies, our developers arrived at a small 5-gate terminal with 1 runway, 1 taxiway, and a small cargo and general aviation area. Based upon their own analysis of the local market in the south suburbs, they were able to determine what size of an airport that needs to be built by 2009 in order to capture that market. The number of passengers who would be getting on and off of a plane per hour, all the way to the year 2038. So it's possible, therefore, given that it's a greenfield, to design an airport in 2038 and then scale it all the way back to the smallest possible airport necessary in 2007, and essentially build and construct the airport every 2, 4, and 5 years in order to accommodate that demand and that traffic. As you can see, peak aircraft operations, they had low numbers, they had medium numbers, and high numbers. But what they found fascinating was the near perfect correlation between the medium numbers in the first year of operation with the low numbers in the next year. This becomes important because it allows our developers to design an airport in 2038 and then scale it all the way back to 2007, so that once this airport is built and once the runways are perfectly placed and the terminal is perfectly placed, we never have to tear anything down. We never have to tear up a runway. Once we make an investment, it is going to be the same investment that we have for the next 25 or 30 years, or the next 50 years, or the next 100 years. I appreciate that very much. So the investments that we've made at other airports around the country, which require billions of dollars of infrastructural development, once we tear them up, that's wasted money over time. But this airport does not allow us to do it, which means over time we can guarantee for low-cost carriers in the market a solid foundation from which to operate. So we scale an airport from 2018 all the way back to 2008. We arrive at a 142,000 square foot terminal, 1,300 parking stalls, 5 gates, and an apron of 933,000 feet. Our airport starts with that small terminal, 1 runway, the general aviation cargo development area. And with hand drawings and renderings, we're able then to determine what the expansion looks like based upon those numbers over time. But always remember that our terminal started out as a 5-gate terminal. As we contemplated the idea of expanding to the right and even expanding in this direction, the same roads that we built on opening day are the exact same roads that we're going to use 25 and 30 years from now as you watch the model begin to expand. Now, this is particularly important because we've been contacted now by dozens of mayors across the country who are very interested in the success of this project, and they want to know how they're going to expand their airports and their facilities, and we believe we stumbled upon that model. Remember, the airport began with a small gate here. It's now contemplating expansion in this direction. By 2025, you see our airport begins to look like a more modern facility with an upper level for arrivals and a bottom level for departures. We have parking that is expanded. We're contemplating the idea of a hotel at the airport. Of course, when an airport is nearly this size, we're talking several 100,000 jobs plus to the regional economy as a result of it. Our new concept. When you walk into this airport, there is no United terminal, per se. There's no American terminal. Well, in Terminal B, you're at United. Terminal C, you're at American. When you walk into this airport, the airlines do not own these gates. These gates are owned by the airport. So if this is American, United, or JetBlue, or FlyEye, or any of the other low-cost carrier airlines, let's say TED as opposed to United, then when you walk in, you might see a United representative standing there checking in that flight behind a big LCD flat-screen television set with United or TED's logo on it. After they check in, and after TED's flight takes off, the logo becomes a Northwest logo. And a Northwest person walks up to the exact same gate and checks in the Northwest passengers. Therefore, the airlines themselves are not locked into long-term agreements that keep them from having big empty gates at an airport while airlines are constantly trying to get in to the market. The airport is flexible enough to allow airlines based upon scheduling to take advantage of the gates based upon the concept. That's an important concept for 21st century airports because it's what takes place right now in Europe. But if you think about it, there are times even when we fly out of our own airports locally where you can walk past 10 empty gates that are owned by an airline to get to your flight, while other airlines are trying to get into the market with empty gates. But as long as the airlines themselves own those gates, they get to lock other carriers out. Not at this airport. The concept essentially turns what has been traditional aviation and its processes on its head, which is the way 21st century airports will have to operate. So, very quickly, our opening day terminal, 1,300 parking spaces. You walk into the airport, very customer friendly. You walk up the escalator, you're at your gate. Your aircraft takes off, another airline pulls in. A very small concourse. And as we contemplate expansion, very cost efficiently, we move from a 5-gate airport, which began 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very quickly to a 13-gate airport. And now our airport looks like this. Still one runway, but very cost effectively, we have expanded capacity without having to change the per enplanement costs of passengers getting on and off of an airport, on and off of an aircraft. In the meantime, we're contemplating phase 2, where we knock the wall out, and now our airport looks like this. While we're contemplating phase 3, knock out the wall, and now the airport looks like this. We build the first phase 4, phase 5, and once we're complete with phase 4 and 5, and our airport looks like this, we then come back to the other side of the airport and begin to make phase 5 look like phase 4. Very modularly, the airport is constructed with no waste, allowing it to expand and capture future aviation capacity in our region. By 2025, we now have a 60-gate airport. It looks more and more like a modern airport. Of course, I have to remind everyone that people are not flying to University Park to get to University Park. They're not flying to Peatone to get to Peatone. They're flying to University Park to get to State Street, to get to Michigan Avenue. The great thing about it is they have to drive through my district to get to your business. So I'd like to think that my position for the last 10 years has been a pro-business position with a little incentive for myself to help reduce the unemployment problems on the south side, the south suburbs. This is 10 minutes from Lincoln Mall, which is suffering. Not far from River Oaks, where Mayor Michelle Quackenbush is the mayor. To get to her mall, which has 47% of the revenue of her town comes from that mall, the major artery to that mall is the Bishop Ford Freeway, which is on the eastern side of this airport. So the thousands of people who will be driving past the Ho Chunk facility, past Mayor Melby's town, past Sauk Village, past the poorest community in America, Fort Heights, all the way to Michelle Marie Quackenbush's town, to get to Michigan Avenue. This is what we're fighting for, not just fighting Chicago over aviation. This is what we're fighting for. From our perspective, this is what's at stake, which is why we can have one big song, one big note for 1 decade. That's how long I've been talking about it. So, remember now, low-cost carriers, that's what we're after. Expanded O'Hare does not accomplish low-cost carriers. Midway Airport, longest runway, 6,446 feet, built to handle 150,000 operations, now at 175. It will never double. It will never be 300,000 flights at Midway Airport. So in order for us to capture low-cost carrier capacity in our market, we need new runways in a new airspace that does not conflict with O'Hare and Midway, and our airport, since we'll be the first of its kind in the nation, will bring billions of dollars over time to our local economy for people who are trying to get to Chicago, not to Peatone. Now, how does our concept expedite that process? From this inaugural airport, the small one-runway, 5-gate terminal, is the University Park Metro Line, which is 3 miles of track. Take the University Park Metro Line and bring it to the front door of the terminal means that a student at Northwestern can get to a low-cost carrier in 35 minutes. Studies have already been done. 25 minutes from the Randolph Street Station to the Abraham Lincoln National Airport at University Park. 25 minutes on the Metro. So now the airport is connected to the market. And once it's connected to the market, we move from a 5-gate airport to a 13-gate airport to a 60-gate airport at exponential rate, because the economics of aviation allows us to accomplish that. So our airport now at 60 gates is now a 2-runway facility. The airplanes taking off and others landing in a different airspace with increased cargo and general aviation, and yes, we'll even take the Meeks Field traffic if you don't want it downtown anymore. We'll be happy to take it. Not far from the facility is UPS. Not far from the facility is a post office facility. Not far from the facility is a FedEx facility. Not far from the facility are billions of dollars in homes and development that will be occurring because we put this facility and we moved on it as expeditiously as possible, even as O'Hare modernizes. This needs to go forward, and it needs to go forward immediately. Oops, wrong direction. So our developers, because of their concern for the local community, went out and took pictures of many of the surroundings around the local community because they wanted to design an airport that fit the local vernacular. So in the South Suburban region, we have obviously soybean, and we obviously have farmland likened unto this example that you have in this direction. We have Frank Lloyd Wright and other architectural geniuses from our region. We wanted to kind of incorporate that into the design of the airport itself. And we arrive at the small, very attractive South Suburban Airport terminal, which fits the local vernacular, consistent with Frank Lloyd Wright, consistent with the color schematics in the South Suburbs. And this small 5-gate airport with 1 runway represents 15,000 jobs by 2009, at a time when most states in the union are losing jobs, at a time when the FAA has said that 10 new airports need to be constructed the size of O'Hare right now, at a time when the New York Times says that 50% of all aviation in 5 to 10 years is going to be low-cost carrier, at a time the state of Illinois has a unique opportunity to lead our country into the aviation future and secure for more and increasingly many Illinoisans a profound economic future for at least another generation. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
If you have questions, please go up to the microphone so the CAN TV guys can get this on. I was going to say living color, but I wasn't going to go that way. Come on up, give a question. Yes, by the way, this is the City Club. You must state your name. Your occupation is up to you. 1 second.
I do also recognize that time has drawn near, and so I understand that I had from 9 to 9:15. I will take just a few questions. I'll keep my answers very brief so that everyone can get to more pressing matters. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Dion. I'm a lifelong resident of Flossmoor. The state of Illinois and the state of Indiana are neighbors, but on this topic, they might as well be separate countries. As a U.S. congressman, wouldn't it be more fiscally responsible to support development, further development of the Gary Airport in an area that's probably even more economically depressed? Thank you.
Assuming that Gary can handle approximately 30,000 operations, I have been an advocate not for fewer airports, I've been an advocate for more airports. If Gary is able to work out a business plan and a business model that allows them to attract low-cost carriers, more power to them. But as soon as Gary is at operational capacity, assuming that's 30,000 operations, it won't even come close to the fact that our region, the country is growing at 4% and we're only growing at 2%. We're talking, sir, about 500,000 operations. We're talking 600,000 operations. We're talking nearly 900,000 operations that are lost in the region. And Gary Airport was not built to handle that. And even more problematic is that Gary Airport is in O'Hare Airport's airspace on the question. When you start talking about 900,000 operations, by definition, you're talking about an airport the size of O'Hare. If you're talking about 175,000 operations, you're talking about an airport the size of Midway. I was at the air show not long ago, and at the air show we saw a number of jet fighters who were taking off and entertaining all of us. Quite extraordinary. What's so extraordinary about a jet fighter is a jet fighter, when it flies, it can turn like that on a dime. I mean, we've all seen it happen, and we've just been kind of marveled at the greatness of America when we see those planes. Unfortunately, 747s don't move quite that agilely, or with that kind of agility. A 747 kind of turns like this, kind of slow. So you need about 60 miles above a field for a 747 to make that turn. 60 miles. Well, that 60 miles is called the O'Hare airspace. And O'Hare and Midway Gary Airport is too close to accommodate 747s, and its runways are too short, so is Midway. By the way, if you ever see a 747 landing in Midway, get out the way. Because they're going to have a real problem stopping. So if you're talking about the kind of economics that we're talking about here, the kind of money and capturing the kind of market that we're talking about here, then we're talking about an airfield in an airspace that does not conflict with O'Hare or Midway that can land a 747 at it. And that's what we accomplish here. Just before I take the next question, this is a real-time flight activity above O'Hare Airport at 9:10 in the morning. As you can see, this line, which by 1 o'clock, it's quite extraordinary to see this northern line right here, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, that line is going to extend, as you see it already extending, all the way across the United States. That's the airspace problem above O'Hare. That's what the FAA is reducing. And don't get me wrong, a lot of local elected officials have a lot of power. I have not quite figured out yet how they're going to change airspace. They control a lot of things, but not airspace. Look at the southern line. This is real time. This is happening right now at O'Hare. I went online to get this at a Flight Explorer website. See that southern line? See those light green flights? All those light green planes are trying to get into O'Hare. All the dark gray planes are leaving O'Hare. At 1 o'clock this afternoon, there are going to be 4 lines like this extended across the United States, from the northwest, from the southwest, from the northeast, from the southwest, all trying to get into O'Hare. And 80% of the delays at O'Hare are weather-related. Now, Chicago officials don't control that. So as the weather begins to change in this region and in this market, and in that airspace, there's always going to be a problem at O'Hare. There's always going to be a problem, because you all can't change the weather. So we have to build an airport in an airspace that does not conflict with O'Hare, that is not in O'Hare's weather pattern. Now we're getting to even more constraints on the definition of capacity. And each one of these constraints has a profound impact on our state's economy, since we are now a service-based economy and not an industrial-based economy. That's why Gary doesn't accomplish that for us. Although there is an argument to be made that Gary also has a congressman who should be invited to the City Club to make his own case for his own district, because I'm making the case for mine. All right? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Tim Taylor with the Electrical Contractors Association. Twofold question. Has the FAA, in regard to construction, actual construction, has the FAA started their environmental impact statement for the airport? And when do you expect the FAA's record of decision before you can start construction?
They have completed Tier 1 environmental studies, and they are now at Tier 2. They have essentially given the go-ahead. They've reserved the airspace for an airfield to be built in this space. I met with Marion Blakey just a couple of weeks ago, and I took her essentially to the field that looks just like Vatry. We talked about it, and I said, I didn't take her, but I was describing to her the field Vatry. I don't know how much more environmental analysis has to be done in the middle of a big empty field where nothing has ever been. There are no dinosaur bones there, and so I'm encouraging them, just like the city of Chicago is encouraging them, to move forward as quickly as possible. But I expect a record of decision by the FAA any moment now. But even more importantly than that is I expect another round of flight reductions at O'Hare before we even get to that, because this temporary cap is only 6 months, and it was just hinted that the FAA is now contemplating even more flight reductions at O'Hare, which is devastating for our economy. For every 747 that does not land, that's $500,000 in economic activity that is lost to our region. 500,000, and that ranges from fueling the plane to cleaning it, to people getting off of a plane and staying at a hotel in downtown Chicago. That's what the economics of a 747 represent in our region. And for every one of them we can say no to, for every one of them we're willing to wait 10 more years or 15 more years by the dozens to say no to, has a profound impact on taxi cab drivers and the average ordinary Chicagoan. We have to do something about that, friends.
Congressman Jackson, my name's Timothy Sipples, MEIGS Action Coalition, and I saw the name Lincoln National Airport, and I was wondering if you could explain, is it going to be Lincoln International Airport, because we have carriers like Jetsgo in Canada and JetBlue's now going to the Dominican Republic. Do you envision an international facility at the new airport?
Well, I start off with the national airport. I figured I'd make everybody nervous if I started off with an international airport. I just start off with a national airport. Right now, there are small communities in Illinois that are still trying to get into Chicago. Let's get Mokina in here. Let's get Springfield in here. Let's get a lot of local communities in Illinois cannot get to Chicago. So this helps solve that problem. And then there are low-cost carriers domestically who are trying to get into our market, who cannot get into our market. Let's solve that problem immediately, and let's capture it. No one else in the country is going to build a hub like this. Let's build a low-cost carrier hub, and we capture it for our future. I don't know who the governor will be in 30 years, or that's irrelevant. The political considerations are irrelevant for what we are doing for Illinois here. The implications of this for many generations, for our children and our children's children, has nothing to do with who the players are in this process. This is about Illinois, and it's about us. So I am confident that over time, if we can maintain the per employment cost, that sure, larger aircraft, including cargo aircraft internationally, will begin to land at this facility, and they will be shared again by all airports in the region, including O'Hare. But let's start with something national. Why 2009? Why Abraham Lincoln? 2009 is the 200th anniversary of the president's birth. And so Illinois needs to do something big for Abraham Lincoln. They're doing it, there's 1,600 events planned around the country and thousands around the world for Abraham Lincoln, but the land of Lincoln ought to do something big in 2009. What would be more appropriate than to have children and parents and people flying in from all over the country saying, I'm heading to Abraham Lincoln, I'm on my way to Abraham Lincoln, check my bag to Abraham Lincoln. And that's what we're building, Abraham Lincoln.
Time is running short, and we certainly thank Congressman Jackson for keeping his responses short. As the moderator of your first debate, Congressman, I want to say that you've been consistent all the way through, unlike other politicians who waffle and waver. Who better to close to the last question than our very own? Yes, make your political statement and then give your question.
Jeff Berkowitz, host and producer of Public Affairs, airing every Monday night at 8:30 on Channel 21 throughout the city of Chicago. Tonight's show is Lee Goodman, who's the Democratic candidate for the 10th Congressional District, and of course, Congressman Jesse Jackson as a former guest of Public Affairs. Congressman Jackson, you mentioned public-private participation. What's the public element in terms of capital costs or other costs that would be borne by government entities? And who are you looking to, and how much do you need?
Well, the public cost is presently zero. And each of the governments that joined the intergovernmental agreement understood that their local communities would not bear the burden of these responsibilities. The airport authority, however, under Illinois law and as a creature of Illinois law, is now a government entity. So it has the power to issue a non-recourse bond, which is a bond that has no recourse for the member communities for the purposes of floating the debt necessary to construct elements of the runway and the airport. So we're confident that our financing is right, along with Mr. Eichler and Mr. Ray's willingness to handle the rest of it. And that's part of the business plan, which we will give a very thoughtful proposal and presentation to the state tomorrow and present them with a memorandum of understanding. If in fact the state, with Mr. Martin and the governor's acquiescence, we believe that we have a project that will be emulated not only in the United States, but quite possibly around the world. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Thanks for your time.